Welcome to the Pat White Show. Let's get into it.
This is Sparta!
Recently, I was asked by one of my friends, as if I have a whole lot of them, to tell my story. And I said, nobody wants to hear my story. They said, well, yeah, but you know, you've been around, you've done a bunch of things. People know who you are. They've seen you around, whatever. I said, yeah, okay, fine. I am who I am, and that's where I am. He said, no. He said, tell them where you came from. What's going on? They probably don't know about that. I said, frankly, no one would be interested in that. He said, you'd not be surprised. So, to acquiesce, I guess I will. All right, here's the deal. I'm a baby boomer. Yes, baby boomers born between 1946, 1964? I'm in the early part of the baby boomers. Born in northern Wisconsin. And I have lived in the first 19 years of my life in 29 different places. You're going to say, how could that happen? Well, you have to understand. When I was 5 years old, my real father was killed in a car accident. A truck lost control and ran into his car and killed him. My mother remarried later on, a couple of years later. And my father, my stepfather, basically I consider my father anyway, he was formerly in the Air Force. He was involved with whatever he did in the Air Force in electronics and radar and things of that ilk. And I have a sister, actually two sisters. One's a half sister, one's my full sister, and another brother. 4 kids total. We moved around a lot because whatever my father did, he was working for various companies. And I can say I have lived about most places you wouldn't imagine. Like I said, 29 places in 19 years. So my first 19 years, we lived everywhere. And because of that, I was always a new kid. Now you think about that. Any place you go, you don't have friends. You have acquaintances. You meet them because you know you're not going to be there that long. And so you develop acquaintances. Some I have some good friends over the years that I stayed with longer. Some friends down in Arizona, because I have lived in Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, you name it. I've lived there. And some of those friends I still have even today. But during all those times growing up, and we lived everywhere you can live, I never knew what my father did. And the joke was he sold greeting cards. I knew he worked for the government. I know he did some government things, but I didn't know what he did. And I didn't find out, by the way, until I actually got my first top secret security clearance as part of being an officer in the United States military when I became a commissioned officer. Then I found out what he did. But, so I'm one of those kids who grew up and you were always in a different place, different time. Never any friends, good friends. They were acquaintances because you knew you weren't going to be there that long. But we got to see places and things that you wouldn't believe. I mean, I have lived in Alaska. That was probably one of the greatest years of my life, 7th grade. Saw everything in Alaska, stunning place. Drove up the Alcan, drove back the Alcan. That's the Alaskan-Canadian highway. Done that. Lived in, like I said, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Utah, Washington State. Lived up there. Lived in all of these places growing up. Finally, graduated from high school in El Paso, Texas. So if you hear me say I'm from El Paso, Texas, that'll tell you basically what I am. And then I attended a little college in El Paso, Texas called Texas Western. Most of you have never heard of that school. But if I say to you, University of Texas at El Paso, you're going to go, I think I heard of that. Well, tell you what was interesting about that school. In 1966, we did something that no school in Texas had ever done, and frankly, no school had ever done in college. We won the NCAA basketball championship with 5 black players. That's right. Haskins, Coach Haskins, 5 black players. I knew all of them. I knew every one of them. They were in my classes. Nobody cared. They were just part of the. They were students just like us. And but Coach Haskins put them on the floor, beat Kentucky, Rupp's run 72-65, University of Maryland, 1966. So yes, I was there for that because in college I found something I enjoyed doing, and that was shooting photographs. When I went to college, I started, and to tell you the truth, I think the only reason I went to college was 2 reasons. One, I didn't want to get drafted. Let's be honest. They're drafting back at 65. And two, I knew I had to have a college degree to do what I really wanted to do because I wanted to become an Air Force pilot. That was my dream because in all of our travels around, we were usually always at Air Force bases, military bases, because that's what we did. What my father was doing in Very, I'm telling you right now, that's what it was. I didn't know what it was, but they did. So I was around the airplane and all this stuff, and I said, man, I want to do that. I want to fly an airplane, but you had to have a college degree. Now, I'll tell you something. My freshman year of college, I flunked out. I just didn't know it. And the first semester, said, hey, you flunked out. Had to go over to the dean's office. I had a big wooden build. I mean, it was just amazing. You went there, you felt like you were going to see God. Pled my case. He let me back in. And from that point on, I was on the straight and narrow. Didn't mess around doing anything. When I first got there, I didn't go to class because I went out and just enjoyed myself because I was free. Nobody told me what to do. I learned the hard way. There's certain things you got to do. So, got involved with the photojournalism, which I loved. Ultimately got a scholarship in that. And then also had a major in broadcasting because I like broadcasting. Well, at the same time, I was working at a DJ part-time at a radio station in El Paso, KELP, and worked my way through college, paying the whole thing off, working at the radio station. That's how I paid it off. Nobody paid a dime for me to go to college. Graduated in 1969. And right then they had the first year of the draft lottery. You remember that? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But they would call out numbers, and the numbers were a birth date. First number they called out, I think, was like April 13th or something like that. I don't recall. And I was listening the whole time, working at a radio station at that time, the KROD, and waiting for my number to be called. And I was driving around, got off of work, just still driving around, still hadn't heard my number being called in this lottery they were doing. Finally, draft number 361, they called my birth date out. I went, I ain't going to be drafted. It doesn't matter. I still joined the Air Force anyway. So, yes, I joined the Air Force, went to Officers San Antonio, Texas at Lackland Air Force Base, which is Medina, which is the annex, and that's where I went to Officers Training School. 7104, if you wonder what the class number was, and got my commission, and then was ultimately sent on to pilot training. Now, between the time I graduated from Officers Training School and started pilot training, my father asked me if I wanted to come up and see what he did. He was stationed at Fort Hood, I think it was, and because I had the security clearance, I was able to go see what he did. Well, now I know. I knew what he did and the things that was going on. So, learned something that took me a lot of years to learn, but I finally figured it out. Finished up my pilot training and ended up going into the United States Air Force as a pilot. Flew in the Strategic Air Command, SAC, the tip of the spear. And we had the nuclear bombs at that time, and our job was to deliver them and not come back. It was a one-way trip, actually. Curtis LeMay, you might have heard about him. He was the head of SAC. So I did that until the end of the Vietnam War because that was 1975. Left the Air Force and ultimately moved here to Fort Wayne, Indiana. Got a job here, working at a company called General Telephone. Joined the Air National Guard at Bear Field and was able to work, be an air guardsman, fly airplanes. I had the best of all worlds. So I was able to do that until I retired in 1995. In between, in 1980, I got married. And I'm still married, by the way, 43, 44 years later, still married. I have 2 daughters, proud of both of them. One's in law enforcement down in Indianapolis, and the other one is a nationally registered dietitian here in Fort Wayne. I've got 2 granddaughters, the love of my life, coolest kids you ever seen, smart. Gosh knows how they're going to be like when they grow up. I pity their dad. So, but I have worked in this business. I've worked everywhere. I've always worked. I've worked in advertising. I've worked in cable television. I worked in radio, television. I've sold advertising. I've been around that my entire life. That's all I know. So I have done about everything that you could possibly do. And people go, wow, you did all that? I went, well, no, it was just a job. It's what I like doing. It's what I enjoyed doing. And I like Fort Wayne. When I was on the radio at WOWO, which I was there, 14 years on every day, following Rush Limbaugh. I enjoyed doing that. That was fun. It wasn't political. I talked about all the other stuff going on because I found that fun. I had a chance, by the way, this probably a lot of folks don't know this, got a letter from some executive at ABC in New York wanting to know if I'd be interested in coming to New York. I told him, no, I ain't leaving. I like what I'm doing here. Don't want to go to New York to take my kids. No. So I'm here. Stayed in Fort Wayne, retired from the Air Force in 75, left rural radio in 2010, went to another station, WGL, worked there until 2014, finally retired. So yes, I officially retired in 2014, but you can't stay retired, folks. Anybody who thinks they can, you're an idiot. When you retire, you must find something you enjoy doing and create another career for yourself in your golden years. Because if you don't, you're going to waste away. Sorry, that's what's going to happen. So that's what I did. So now, yes, now I'm a range safety officer. I work for a local college in an automotive division. I just enjoy what I'm doing. I can't stop working. I can't stop doing things. And finally, my son-in-law and my daughter said, why don't you do a podcast? Why don't you talk about things? Talk about stuff that you want to talk about. Well, as it turns out, I thought about it. I'm thinking, well, I've been off the radio for a long time. Why do I want to get back into this? I'll tell you why. It allows me to talk about things that I like to talk about, but obviously don't have the venue to do it anymore. On a podcast, you can talk about what you want to talk about and not worried about what somebody is going to say. Well, don't talk about that. Don't discuss that. This advertiser will get mad. You know, when I was at WO, I had a situation. I did a story on from USA Today newspaper. That's where I got the story from, about McDonald's and their restrooms. And it just struck me as an interesting story about restrooms in fast food restaurants. Well, McDonald's didn't even advertise with our station I was on, but they advertised with other stations in our chain because our owner owned a bunch of stations, and McDonald's canceled the advertising for all the other stations in the chain and panicked everybody in the company. And apparently it was a big miss, my fault, because I talked about McDonald's. Well, suddenly I realized, well, apparently an advertiser who doesn't even advertise on your station can control what you say. Now think about that. Somebody tells you you must go along with it, whatever they tell you to do, and you can talk about this or you must talk about that. And I'm thinking, this podcast, I could just say what I want to say, discuss what I want to discuss, and be who I am. Well, that's why I'm doing this podcast. That's why I talk about all the things I talk about. It's nothing fancy. It's just my opinion on things. You can listen to anybody's opinion you want to. That's your call. It's America. But I will tell you my observation on what I think and what I see. You may like it, you may not. If you don't like it, I still hope you listen because you're going to get someone else's opinion who you don't like. And that's fine. When I was on the radio, I'm sure a lot of people didn't like listening to me. But they listened because they knew I might say something that might get them to think. So if I get you to think, I get you to talk about something, I get you to go home that night, or you're driving around, you listen to something, go home at the dinner table and say, hey, I heard about X, Y, and Z. Because my job is simple, to inform and entertain. That's what I do. My name is Patrick White, and my job is to inform and entertain. And I hope I do just that. And now you know. Coming up next. Well, thank you for joining me for another episode of whatever it is that I do on this podcast. Well, today we're going to be talking about hats. Now, I know you're going to say, what a stupid thing to talk about. But here's the reason. A lot of folks wonder why I'm always wearing a ball cap. Well, I didn't used to, but since I've retired, I actually wear it out of pride. And the reason I do this is because I am hoping to run across people like me. Now, I'm not saying people who look like me or sound like me or whatever. I'm looking for people who served their country like I did. It sounds strange, but actually it's not. You go out there and you're going to see people wearing hats that show what their military involvement was. Mostly I see people in Vietnam, but every once in a while I run across people from who actually were in certain segments of the military that I was involved with. I had it happen at a restaurant where a person looked at my license tag, the wrapper, if you will, around my license tag, and asked me about it. And it turns out he was also in Strategic Air Command, and he was a mechanic, worked on airplanes. So I had looked for people who served, so I can talk to them. They're buddies. We're brothers. We all did something that most people don't do. You figure out that the percent of people that have served the country in the military is a tiny percentage. And I'd like to honor, and I'm brothers with those people out there. So, yes, I wear this hat. They see that I'm Air Force. So some people will come up to me. I recently had let me grab it right here. I had a young man come up to me recently at a restaurant and hand me this. And you see what that is? It's a coin. That's a thank you for your service coin. I get many people come up and say, oh, thank you for your service. You're not really sure what to say, because when I was in the early 70s, 1970 to be exact, people didn't say that to people in the military. Trust me, they didn't. So I'm proud of it. I wear it. People recognize me. I recognize them. I salute people. That's how I do it. But I have another bunch of hats. I want to show you what I got. Here's another hat. Here's one. United States Air Force Command Pilot, because that's one of my hats. I wear that. There's pins on it. Here's a pin, Strategic Air Command. There's a KC-135, which I used to fly. And there's the one on 122nd Fighter Wing, because I served in that until I retired in 1995. Here's another one, Air Force hat. Air Force, proudly served. Got ranked there on the side. Another hat that I have. Here's one. I got this from a guy who's a former 135 pilot like me, and he started a hat company. I think it's called pilotballcaps.com, pilotballcaps.com. Makes and sells hats. That's what he does. He's a former 135 driver, and I said, here's what I need. So here's another one he made up for me. This is one. See that wings on there? Those are wings. If you don't know what it is, you wouldn't know what it is, but anybody who knows what these wings are would say, oh, that's an Air Force guy. And then I have another one from my ball cap. Here's one, the command I was in. This one here says Strategic Air Command. There it is. Because I was a SAC pilot, 1970, 1975. And that's what I like, what I did. And speaking of that, here's another hat. There it is. KC-135 Stratotanker. That is probably one of the most important planes in the Air Force, because an airplane ain't got to go anywhere unless it ain't got gas. If it's got gas, it can go anywhere. The gas station, the flying gas station in the sky, those guys are now considered the pivot point to anything in the Air Force. Got to have gas. Air Force, Navy, Marines, you name it. They're flying airplanes. Somebody's got to gas them up. That was my job. So I flew those, so there's a KC-135. Now, I have one hat that isn't military. I'll show it to you. This hat, come and take it. Yes, am I a fan of the Second Amendment? You better believe I am. But if I can see this shirt I've got on right here, let's see. Right there's got my name on. Isaac Walton League. See, I also work as a range safety officer at a rifle and pistol range, and I'm nationally certified to do it because I believe in the Second Amendment, very much so. And that's what keeps America, America. The reason our founding fathers created the Second Amendment was to make sure that government, the people that we put in charge of us, knew that if they ever got it, they started doing wrong and turned into a tyrants, that we, the citizens, would have the ability to take them on and remove them if necessary. Hope that never happens. But that's why the Second Amendment was written, to make sure that government didn't turn into tyrants, because they lived with that before when they had the king. Do you remember those days? So I am a big supporter of the Second Amendment. That's what I care about, because it means something to me, as do the other amendments in the Constitution. I am a constitutionalist. Now you know. So now you understand why I wear the hats. Now you know what it's for. And now you can go on and say, okay, I know where he's going. That's a little something for you to understand. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch this. And now you know a little bit more about me as we trek along on the Pat White Show, my little podcast, where I'm here to inform and entertain. And I hope I do that with you. Thanks again for watching. See ya. Coming up next. The biggest stories in the news today happens to be the death of one Orenthal James Simpson, better known as O.J. Simpson, passed away today at the age of 76 of prostate cancer. Now, depending upon the famous O.J. trial that happened back in 1994. Back then, back when I was on the radio in WOWO, and I was came on every day on Ron Gregory's show in the afternoon and gave the latest information about what was going on, what was happening, all the things that happened during that trial in that period. And I would discuss all the things going on. Also, I would do another show over on another one of the Federated channels. I think it was 1380 at the time, WQHK, if memory serves me right. Could be wrong. But every day covered what was going on with the OJ trial, and it was what they call the trial of the century. And you remember many things, for those of you that were around for it. Remember the white Bronco chase? My wife and I were having dinner at a restaurant over there on Broadway, across from the law offices of Steve Shine. It was a restaurant there, excellent restaurant, fabulous coleslaw. Can't remember the name of it. That's since closed, owned by other folks. But watching it on TV, and we saw the chase going on TV. There it was in the restaurant. The trial came up. Johnny Cochran, all the different people in there. If the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. All of that stuff that was being done. And then it seemed after months, and it was months, the jury deliberated and found OJ not guilty. Now, most people, sane people, rational people, pretty well know he did it, but the jury did not convict him. Now, he was ultimately sued in a civil trial by the Goldman family, and found guilty and was assessed a fine of $33.5 million. I don't know if the Goldman family ever saw a penny of it, but OJ, he ended up going to jail again for a robbery that took place at a hotel in Las Vegas. I think he was in jail for 7 years, I believe. It might have been 7 or 9 years. Got pardoned and was out looking for the killer the rest of the time down in Florida. Apparently thought the killer was around golf courses or something like that. But has passed away. But I remember something vivid. That jury, the day the jury verdict came down, and we had a young lady who was a receptionist at the station at that time, and I was standing in the newsroom, and I could see right down the hallway where the receptionist was. And when the guilty verdict came down, I'm standing looking at the monitor in the newsroom, and I happened to glance down the hallway on our receptionist, who was African American. She was walking out, getting ready to leave because it was late in the afternoon, and she had the biggest smile on her face. Now, she was happy OJ got off. And I think that was the attitude back at that time. You have to remember, we had the Rodney King situation with the police. We had, the whole thing was strictly a race problem going on. It was the Los Angeles police. The fact that they even had the trial in downtown Los Angeles instead of out in Brentwood where OJ lived, so that they could say, well, it was done in downtown where the racial makeup of downtown was different than in Brentwood because Brentwood was a rich area, mostly rich people lived there. And was downtown, and Judge Ito, and on TV they had the dancing Itos on the late night shows. I mean, it's all we saw. But OJ has died at the age of 76. Don't know if most people remember it, but boy, that is a big memory in my mind because I was doing the analyst on that and watched the thing from start to finish. One of those memories you have. And he is now gone at 76. And I don't think the Gold family ever recovered a dime from their charges and winning their case against OJ. Something to talk about, something to understand, something in history. OJ Simpson, 76. Passes away of prostate cancer. I wonder how he will be received when he reaches St. Peter's Gate. Just saying. That's all I got for you. See ya. Coming up next. Well, as you know, the United States was able to enjoy an eclipse of the moon, an eclipse of the sun, if you will, when it passed over our country. April the 8th. And prior to that, every radio station, every newspaper, every TV station, every internet site in the entire world was talking about the eclipse. And everybody was on their port, their place, their channel, their whatever they were, telling people, do not look directly at the sun, because it will damage your eyes. And there's no receptors in there to tell the eye, oh, that hurts. Well, now keep in mind, everybody was told, get yourself, here, let me show you. Get yourself some of these, okay? Put these on, use these. These are specially approved, almost like welder's glass pane. So you look at the sun and it wouldn't damage your eyeballs, your retinas. Well, guess what? In New York City, and I'm just using New York City because that's the first place I saw the story from, people were heading to doctor's offices, ophthalmologist's office, eye doctor's office, optician's office, optometrist office. Oh, doc! Oh, my eyes are hurting. I got a headache. Oh, my God. Yep. They can't begin to count how many idiots showed up at doctor's offices complaining of, I was looking at the sun in the eclipse. Oh, you're wearing your glasses? Were you using a special protector? No. I put my camera to it. Really? The sun is very powerful. The sun can destroy the retina in your eye. The retina, folks, is where you get the images or where you end up seeing. And if you have a fried retina in the back of your eye, you're going to be blind. And yet you've been told by everybody, by the government, by your bosses, by your TV stations, by those influencers on the internet, you've got to wear some protection over your eyeballs or make yourself up a little special gizmo to watch the eclipse. Don't look directly into the sun. Doctors and eye specialists have been waiting for the public to show up, and sure enough, in New York City, they did. You can't be that stupid, can you? Well, apparently you can. Now, I had my little things. Matter of fact, I even used this when I put over the lens of my iPhone. Tried putting over the lens of my Nikon, but that didn't work real well. But the point being is, wore these. And we've got another eclipse coming up in 2044? I think this one's going to go down through the northwest to the southeast, sort of like starting in Washington State and going over Florida. It's just the opposite of what we had this time. I think Orlando is going to be one of the big places for that. I can imagine how it's going to be at Disney World for the Eclipse. Oh, man. But anyway, that's 2044. So people are showing up at doctor's offices complaining of eye injury because they didn't wear or use this. That's all I got. See you. Coming up next. Well, you know, the high cost of a college education nowadays and the unguaranteed return on that so-called investment among many young people, thousands, frankly, thousands of young folks are owing a ton of money because they have student loans. They can't get a job. Student debt is killing them. Well, in recent years, more and more young Americans, especially Gen Z, have decided that, you know what, maybe going to college is not the best idea they ever had. And they're going what they call as the blue-collar route, and they're getting a rather healthy green payout. Now you're saying, what is he talking about? Well, look, when I was young, I went to college. And when you were young, in that era, that people felt the only way you could get ahead in the world was to get a college degree. And back then, to a degree, they were probably right. But then everybody started going to college and taking all these different degrees. And many times people got degrees in subjects that were worthless. I mean, if you've got a degree in fine art, well, unless you work at a museum or some fancy art place, that degree is worthless. Who's going to hire you? I know when I went to college, my degree was in photojournalism and a second major was in broadcasting. Have I used those? Yes, I have. But it allowed me to get a college degree, allowed me to also go into the United States Air Force after graduating college and fulfilling my lifelong dream of becoming a pilot. And I did that. Served my country, and I'm proud of that. But other people out there got degrees in areas that were useless. Well, more and more young Americans have decided today that maybe becoming a plumber, electrician, construction worker, or an auto mechanic, yes, you heard me right, an auto mechanic might be a way to the whole green village that others aren't finding. Turns out that more and more young folks in Generation Z, whatever they happen to be, whatever they call that generation, are going, you know, do we really need to go to college and get all the massive debt and not be able to find a job? Yet they go to a technical school. Now, technical schools, we here in Indiana have one of the finest. And it's also one of the largest in the country. It's called Ivy Tech. Ivy Tech Community College is where they teach people skills, a trade. Now, at Ivy Tech, the number one thing that they teach at that school, the number one teaching section is nursing, the nursing school, and that is growing in leaps and bounds. But they have other areas that they teach people: HVAC, air conditioning, woodworking. Hey, people got to build houses, build stuff, electronic design, robots, all that kind of stuff. People have welding careers. I mean, hey, you break something, you got to get welded together. They teach that. And another one they teach is automotive skills. That's right. Ivy Tech can teach young men and women. I should point that out. They teach a lot of women too, who can become ASE certified mechanics. Because when you get your car repaired, you got to take it to what? Your dealer, somebody who repairs cars? They say they've got ASE certified mechanics. Those people have been trained and have certification. They know what they're doing when they get around your car. Some places require them to use ASE certified mechanics. This is what young people are learning today. Generation Z has figured it out. You know how much plumbers make? You know how much the air conditioning guys, when they come to your house, make? Well, you do if you've got a bill. That's how it's changed today. Schools like Ivy Tech Community College are taking over in a lot of different ways. They are getting students hand over fist because students have gotten smart. They realize you don't necessarily need a college degree to become rather wealthy. you can do it through a place like Ivy Tech. Just saying. That's all I got for you. Go forth and learn something. See ya. Coming up next. Well, in case you haven't heard, Israel and Hamas are trying to work upon a ceasefire of sorts. And they've been working on this for, well, it seems like months. It's happening over in Qatar. You got different sides saying, okay, we want this or we want that. Well, the latest one just came out, and Hamas says that we don't like the Israeli ceasefire. Here's what we want. And Hamas wants Israel to immediately stop the war in Gaza. Not just temporarily, not just 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Stop permanently. Do not continue the war. Then let everybody back in. Then provide aid to all the individuals. Then rebuild their country, the Palestinians' land. Rebuild all of that. Oh, and if you want your hostages back, we'll release 40 of them. Trouble is, they don't know where the 40 is. They don't even know if they have them. But they want the Israelis to release 900 Palestinian prisoners. For 40, for 900. Including 100 who are serving lifelong sentences for some serious crimes in Israel. Life sentences, folks. We want those released too. And no more war. Israel leaves, doesn't come back again. Now, why does Hamas say that? Well, Hamas currently has 2, maybe 3 battalions in the southern part of Gaza, close to the Egyptian border. That's all they got left. But their leadership, that's where they are. And what they're saying is, hey, Israel, you back down, you stop it, go back to your ways, and we will rebuild. That's right. Hamas, we've got the guns. You give us all the aid, you give us all the rebuild, you do all of that, and you send in massive amounts of aid, and we will take it away from the Palestinian people because we don't care about them. We are not Palestinian, we are Hamas. It's sort of like Germany had German citizens and the Nazis, kind of 2 different factions. Hamas, Palestinians, kind of the same concept. But Hamas says, you do that, Israel. We got 2 battalions, we'll rebuild, and then the day will come where we will attack again. From the river to the sea, we're going to destroy you, and we're going to drive you off the face of the planet Earth. And we want you to agree to that. And that's our agreement for a ceasefire. You do the ceasefire, you leave Gaza forever, leave it alone, stop the war, don't attack again, but let us rebuild our forces so we can attack you again. That's the plan. You may not like it, but that's what Hamas is doing. And believe it or not, so many of the people of the world are going, yay, yes. People are siding with Hamas because it's a PR war, and Hamas is winning that, much to the sadness for Israel. Bibi Netanyahu said, we're going to take out those last 2 divisions of Hamas, and we're going to cut off the head of the snake. Hamas says, no. PR is on our side. Public is on our side. Hey, American students are on our side. Leave, stop the war so we can rebuild and attack you again. That's what's going on. There's the agreements just came out. That's what they want, and that's how they want to make it turn out. Hamas wants to win and make sure Israel loses. Don't think that's a good plan, and neither do the Israelis. That's all I got. See ya. Coming up next. Well, what do you say we talk about a new potential regulation the Biden administration is attempting to foist onto store owners and persons of color? You may not have heard about this one if you're not a smoker. And if you are a smoker, then you probably have heard about this particular little controversy that may be bubbling in the wings that may not work out the way they intended to plan to have it work out. You see, Biden administration has been going after menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars, saying that, these cater to children and we want to ban the sale of it. Well, they ran into a bit of a buzzsaw because the store owners and bodegas and places in the lower echelon areas, they make a lot of money and sell a lot of cigarettes, flavored cigarettes, especially in the black and brown communities who apparently like menthol cigarettes. I wasn't aware of that, but now I am. So they were going to put out the regulations through the Food and Drug Administration and whoever else does this stuff to prohibit the sale of those kind of things, saying, no, we got to stop it. After all, cigarette smoke kills people. And yes, many people have quit smoking. I understand that, and I respect that stance. But they're saying, let's get rid of all menthol and flavored tobacco, like products like cigars or menthol cigarettes. Turns out the black and brown community are the major ones who utilize that. And now certain factions are saying, hey, Joe, you want us to keep voting for you and you keep slamming on us, taking away what we like, our menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars? I mean, I can think of a whole bunch of things out there that, I remember menthol cigarettes. I mean, they're in green packages, I think. And the flavored cigars, yep, they exist. But now certain organizations and some big and powerful organizations are saying, don't you dare touch our stuff. You want our vote? Don't touch our stuff. That's where we are, folks. In politics, it's all about winning a vote. It's all about getting enough people to vote for you or not vote against you, because it's all about power and retaining power. And right now, the current administration may be on some very serious rocky terrain when it comes to more regulation and taking away what people see as their rights. Something to think about. In case you hear about it, now you know. See ya. Coming up next. All right, I want to tell you about what's called the law of unintended consequences that's happening right now just in the state of California. But in some ways, it's happening around us here in Indiana and probably other states around the United States. California, as you may know or may not know, decided to pass a new law that said fast food restaurants, they would have to pay their employees $20 an hour starting pay. $20 an hour. Somebody right off the street knows nothing, bring them in, you got to pay them $20 an hour. Now, this causes a lot of havoc in two different ways. Havoc number one is, let's say I'm working in a restaurant in California, and I've been there I'm a manager. And let's say I'm making $25 an hour as a manager. And you're bringing somebody off the street, and the minimum pay you're going to be paying people that I have to train as the manager, I have to watch over, I have to babysit, I have to pay those people $20 an hour, and I'm making $25. Guess what I'm doing? I'm going to the boss saying, hey, you raise them from $7.50 an hour to $20 an hour. I'm getting $25. I'm your manager. I'm controlling these people. I'm working with these people. I'm training these people. I want you to start paying me $50 an hour. That's what I deserve. My rates need to go up too. That's exactly what's happening. You say, well, all the underlings get 20. The people above them are now going in and saying, you got to raise me up too. And ultimately, they're going to have to. Well, that's problem number one. Problem number two in California is causing a mess in California schools. The lunch ladies, we all know what the lunch ladies are. Prepare all those things. The pizza was the best, actually. And when I was in school, I liked the rolls they made because you get 4 of them for a dime and butter and get yourself a grape knee-high, and that was my lunch. Use my lunch money for a dime instead of the 35 cents my mom gave me. I had money left over. Well, anyway, the schools of California are suddenly realizing that, hey, the lunch ladies aren't going to work for minimum pay in the schools. They're going to go to the fast food restaurants where they have experience. They know how to work. They work and they do a great job. They're not newbies. They're adults. And they're saying, hey, I'm going to a place I can get $20 an hour to start. Fast food restaurant. I'm not working in the cafeteria with snot-nosed kids. And that's exactly what they're doing in California. Well, now more and more places are saying, hey, we've got to pay people $20 an hour to keep people. How many times have we ridden down streets, and I've seen this myself, you see signs out, now hiring, $15 an hour, $16 an hour. Minimum wage is $7.50. But because all these various organizations are forced to raise their pay to their people, it's causing everybody else to say, well, I'm going to lose employees to that company over there, or that company over there, because they're paying $15 an hour. I'm only paying $10 an hour. When I thought I was paying more than the average wage to get my people in the first place. Now it's 15. Some cases it's going to be 20. All started in California. There it started, folks. When I told you what happens out west eventually comes east. And it's heading toward us. Because now, if your boss in your company where you work hires in somebody who you have to train, and he's paying them almost what he's paying you as a trainee coming in, what are you going to say? Hey, boss, I want a raise too. You know what that does? That creates a massive problem that starts to snowball. And suddenly everybody's pay goes up. And you know what happens when everybody's pay goes up? Inflation goes up with it. Just the way it works. It's a natural rhythm of things. Pay goes up, inflation's going to go up to match it. Now you understand what's going on. So if you see somebody, fast food workers say, hey, they're getting $20 an hour. Yeah, but they're losing employees from other places like schools. And if the schools want to keep them, schools are going to have to pay them the same $20 an hour fast food restaurants are paying. And if the school has to pay them, guess what? The schools are going to come to you. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer. We need a higher tax rate to offset the cost of our lunch ladies earning $20 an hour. It's a vicious cycle, folks. And guess what? You're living it. Just so you know, go forth and chew on that one. Lunchroom pizza, of course. See ya. Coming up next. All right, I'm about to do some prognosticating about the upcoming presidential election, which is about 7 months from right now when I'm talking to you. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think this election is going to hinge upon. The issues that I think you and I, and frankly, American voters, are going to have to decide who is going to do the best job of dealing with these issues. You ready? All right, issue number one, food. I don't know about you, but if you haven't been to the grocery store lately, you haven't seen the prices of what's happened in our grocery stores. People are finding out that what they used to buy cost them approximately, for a family, goes out and buys their big grocery thing, it's about $125 more than they spent before this mess went down 2-3 years ago. Everything costs more. I went to the grocery today and got a couple of bags of groceries, and it cost me $75. And I bought normal stuff like bread, eggs, vegetables. Oh, and a roast. Nothing a fancy roast. Cost me $20 for a 2-pound roast. That's $10 a pound. A chuck roast? Yep. That's what's going on. Cost of food, item number one. What are we doing about that? And what can each candidate do about corralling those costs? Item number two, fuel. I don't know about you, but I just saw gas prices, and where I live, went up in one day, 50 cents a gallon. I'm not kidding. Went up 50 cents. It's not, and that's not unusual. We see 30, 40 cents a gallon jumps. Those happen. Now, everybody said, well, the summer fuel is coming. It's going to cost more. All right, I understand that. But 50 cents a gallon jump, we're paying close to $4 a gallon here in Indiana. Now, I know some other places are paying more on the coast, West Coast. Some other places are probably paying less. But 3 years ago, cost a gallon was like $2. I'm paying $4 nowadays. Item: which candidate could do the best about taking care of that problem? Item number 3, housing. Two things in housing: either buying or renting. The cost of renting, and a lot of folks rent, are seeing their rental prices going up through the roof. They're being raised about every month, they feel like. A small apartment is becoming over $1,000 a month. For what? A studio? Depends on where you live. But that's the fact. I've seen it myself when I was living down in Florida, how much the rent went up every single year. It wasn't 2-3%. It was like 10-15%. That's a problem. And mortgages. Right now, if you want a mortgage, it's going to cost you over 7%. Used to be, what, 2.3, 2.5, 2.7%? Now it's 7? There's another issue. That wasn't that way 3 years ago. Item number 4, healthcare. Healthcare is getting more expensive. The cost of medication is getting more expensive. And frankly, people are being priced out of the market. Whether you have Medicare, Medicaid, whatever you happen to have, everything is costing more, and more doctors are saying, hey, unless you're part of our network, we're not going to treat you. Then you got to figure out which network you're in. And you don't want to be out of network because it's going to cost you a boatload. That's item number 4, is healthcare. And then finally, the last one. And this is one of those iffy ones that I'm not really sure how people are going to react to this one: immigration. Immigration has become a huge mess in America because now we are being deluged with an influx of people from all over the world, mostly South America, Central America, and Mexico. But boy, we're getting everybody coming in from everywhere. And they are coming across the border like nobody's business, and nobody's stopping them. Worse than that, some of them are getting driver's license. In some states, when you get a driver's license, you automatically vote, or can vote because you're registered. And now, how do we control mail-in voting? Because if you're a registered voter, you can get a mail-in voting ballot and not be an American citizen. And worse than that, when we have the annual, or the every decade, we count everybody in America. We do a census. Because everybody is counted, not American citizens. Previous administration wanted to count American citizens only, but nope, counting everybody. That should increase the number of members of the House of Representatives. I'm guessing somewhere between 10 and 12 new representatives who, frankly, will be probably on one side of the aisle. And if that one side of the aisle gets all those people, they will control the Congress probably forever, or close to it. So immigration is an issue on the census, on the number of districts, and who runs the country. Those are the issues to take a look at. Those are the issues that I say is going to determine how the election works out in 7 months. That's my opinion. I don't know what your opinion is. I'm just giving you the issues. What will the other side run on? Well, to tell you the truth, they only got one choice. One choice. And that one issue they're going to have to run on, because they've got nothing else to show for it, is abortion. That's going to be the issue they've got. They've already tested it. They've already gone with it. Ask Kamala Harris. That's it. And they know that if they run on that, they got a good chance of winning the presidential election, because they know what's happened in the past. So, folks, there's your issues going into the 2024 presidential election. You decide where you stand, you decide what you want to do, and you decide how you're going to vote. But now you know what the issues are going to be. I've told you 7 months in advance because it's pretty obvious. That's all I got. See ya. Coming up next. One of the things that Americans love is a good old-fashioned whodunit, how'd they do it, and is it really real? Well, I got a story for you out of Los Angeles, California, and there's the story from the LA Times. They say one of the largest cash heists, that means stealing, ever. Of burglars steal as much as $30 million in cash from a vault. Happened out in Los Angeles. It's a company called Garda, Garda. You may have seen their trucks over the years. They specialize in providing cash for retail stores because they got to have a lot of cash for people that are using cash, or whether it's a gas stations, retail, fast food outlets, any place that uses a lot of cash that needs to have money on hand, grocery stores. Garda is the main company that does this. Their job is to step in and make sure everybody has all the stuff they need cash-wise. Because you're saying, well, where are they going to get it? Well, banks stock cash, but they don't necessarily go around to grocery stores, handing out money. Garda does this. Now, they got a facility in Los Angeles, and that facility there, you can see what it looks like there. This is a one big giant facility, and it is guarded in ways that you could possibly not imagine. They have got every single type of electronic monitoring and gizmos and data matrix and you name it. I mean, it's like something out of a movie. Somehow, people got in and stole, and did it real quick, by the way. They managed to get down through the ceiling and cut through some bolts in the safe. These special safe time locks and lasers. I mean, they got everything. And then they burrowed through the side of a building and did it all before the police could answer whatever burglary alarms that went off from Garda. Well, there are people saying, whoever did this had to know the systems, had to know how everything works, had to know where everything was, had to know where all the codes were and all the electron beams and everything around that's floating around, to be able to do this, to get in, hit the place, avoid everything, and get out with $30 million in green hard cash. Kind of reminds me of the movie Die Hard. Remember they tried to steal all the stuff from the inside of the Nakahoma Bank. Well, whatever it was, whoever it did, the media is saying this has to be an inside job. Nobody can do this because it's too sophisticated. Well, I don't think there's anything too sophisticated, but my guess is, yeah, it's probably an inside job. Now, if I were police, I'd be looking at all the people who've been fired recently, or the last few months, or maybe even years, been fired from Garda, who have inside knowledge of all the security systems they have. That's where I'd start. Will they ever find the money? Don't know. But I'm guessing right now, someone's living very high on a hog, probably in a place that's going to be very difficult to get them back from. Just a thought. But then again, I could be wrong. After all, they are criminals, and most of them are stupid. That's all I got. See ya. Coming up next. I don't know if you remember this, but way back in the year 2013, President Obama went on the TV and he earned himself what is known as the Lie of the Year, after he repeatedly assured Americans, remember this statement, if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. Remember that? If you like your health care plan, you can keep it. That simply wasn't true. And the rollout of Obamacare, better known as the Affordable Care Act, caused millions of people to receive cancellation notices from their insurance company. The government's intrusion into the private health insurance business had major consequences, and many Americans, frankly, weren't happy about it. Well, 10 years later, President Joe Biden is now driving a major disruptions in another
other U.S. Industry, automotive. You see, Biden's telling him, I want you to stop selling gas-powered vehicles, and I want you to sell only electric vehicles. That's what he's done. He's given them mandates. They are the strongest ever pollution standards. And it literally puts U.S. car companies and workers into a very serious situation where many people could be losing their jobs. Or as has been previously said, it's going to be a bloodbath. It could be. Because EVs are turning out to be a bust. EVs are turning out to be the biggest mistake that the administration foisted on everybody. Now, granted, we're seeing crossover vehicles, we're seeing hybrids, they call them. Those seem to be selling. But right now, when you're mandating to an entire country, hey, if you want to buy a new car, you're going to have to buy an EV. Do you like your health care plan? You can keep your health care plan. You remember that one? Well, that's kind of where we stand, folks. The Biden administration has put out an edict as rules behind the EPA. So he's not going to Congress. He's just saying, we're going to have the EPA mandate rules on the car manufacturers, say this is what you got to do. Here's the output you got to have. Knowing the output is it can't be done with a gas-burning engine. It can only be done with electricity. And wants everybody in America to drive electric cars. How we're going to power all electric cars, I don't have a clue. But that's where we stand. And if that doesn't concern you, well, apparently you're pretty much dead. Because it should concern everybody. Because if you can't drive an electric car for very long. And if you live in the northern climate, let me give you a little hint. Let's say you live in, North Dakota. Let's go to Minot. That's a good place. You have an electric car, you get it all charged up. Then you jump in the car and you say, man, it's cold here in Minot. Turn on the heat. If you check the battery in your car, it's now starting to degrade. And those miles you thought you were going to get, no, the miles are cut down because the heater runs on electricity. Everything in the car runs on electricity. And if you use it up, suddenly your gas tank of electricity gets lower and lower and lower. That's what's happening. Just something to think about. So if you hear the president saying, we're doing this, we're going to get electric cars. Nope, it ain't going to work. And yet there are people out there that say, let's keep this type of administration in office. That astounds me because I'm a driver. And I don't want someone telling me I must have an electric vehicle. That just goes against the grain of America I was raised in. Just saying. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. See ya.
Coming up next. Well, there's a story that I've been following for the last weeks, maybe a number of weeks. Has to do with Jennifer and James Crumbley. I don't know if you remember those names, but they were the parents of a young man up in Michigan who gunned down a number of students in his school. And that young man has now been sentenced to life in prison. And I don't think he's going to see the light of day. But what happened after that, the prosecutor brought charges against his mother and father, manslaughter charges, saying that they, by their actions or lack of actions, were partly responsible for the death of these kids. Well, it turns out a Columbine survivor, and actually he is the brother of a young lady by the name of Rachel who was killed during the Columbine many years ago. He was talking on TV saying, hey, you know what? The kid was the one who did this. The kid was the one who killed all the other kids. You shouldn't be penalizing the parents. Now, that's an interesting concept. Should the Crumbleys have been charged with manslaughter in this particular case? Because it opens an entire door down the road. Could other parents whose children commit heinous crimes, could they ultimately be charged? Now, think about that. It just doesn't have to be murder. It could be attempted murder. It could be about any crime you could think of. They could say, well, the parents, you did not do a good job with your child, therefore we are going to charge you also. Now, this opens a big door, and it's a very concerning door. Now, in the case of the Crumblies, to be honest with you, they did not show themselves as being very responsible parents. Apparently, they knew their son had problems. The son pleaded with the family, get him help. They were more concerned with something else. I'm not sure what it was. But the thing that bothered me the most, the father went out and bought his teenage son a rifle, a long gun, as we call it. And it was collapsible. He folded it down, put it in his backpack. And when the parents were called into the school, the teachers, the assistant principals, counselors, they were talking with the parents. The parents didn't want to take him home. They had other things they had to do. And they just left him in school. And the kid later on comes out blazing and kills 4 people. Well, the parents were charged. 2 different trials. Yet they were both found guilty and both sentenced to 10 to 15 years. Now, this gentleman, Craig Scott's his name, when his sister Rachel was killed in Columbine, he said, hey, don't let the kid is the one who did this. But did the parents not do their jobs to make sure the kid was taken care of? I see situations out there where bad things, a kid will do something really, really bad. And the parents goes, well, we didn't know anything. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But are we now getting to a point where we're going to charge parents as well as the kid if they get themselves in trouble? That's a very slippery slope, folks. Very slippery. And we better be careful how we use that law or laws. Just saying it's something to think about. Because you know what? If you got kids, it could happen to you. That's all I got. See ya. Coming up next.
Ladies and gentlemen, America is at war. Now, it's not your traditional war fought on a battlefield against an external enemy. No, it's not that. This is a civilizational conflict. It's against the internal enemy. Now, that sounds a little bit weird, but this enemy is involved with what they call quota regime, a very revolutionary threat that wants to reorganize America, our society, around what is known as DEI. That's right. That's the war we're facing. And what's happened is it has now invaded the medical profession. We expect here in America to have the best care. People come all over the world to be in our hospitals because we have the best medical care probably on the planet. My opinion. Now, a gentleman by the name of Roger Cohen, he's an oncologist and professor at the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania, decided to study. Wanted to see how bad things were getting in our teaching hospitals, where we send people to medical school. Well, he was looking at a gentleman by the name of Abraham Flexner, and this goes back into 1910. Now, Flexner was not a physician, but he was commissioned by the Council of Medical Education and the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. That's pretty big time people, right? So he was charged with increasing the woefully inadequate medical education system. Plain words, he said, hey, we got to go and clean up these medical schools because some of them aren't worth junk. So what he did was he ended up recommending closing all but 31 of the 155 AMA schools, and that included 80% of the white schools. That was that would have been 119 out of 148, closed them, and 71% of black schools, which is 5 out of the 7. And he said, hey, medical is stupid. They're doing a bad job. But now in the medical schools we currently have, DEI has come in and is totally changing society. Like, well, we need to have more equity, more inclusion, more diversity. So they want to bring people in and make them doctors who are not qualified. They're getting rid of things like medical testing. You got to take a test. Sort of like going to law school, you got to take the LSAT test. Well, they have tests like that too. And so really what they've done is this gentleman, Mr. Flexner, I'll tell you how DEI has gotten into this whole thing. The Association of Medical Colleges took his name off of the prestigious Abraham Flexner Award for Distinguished Service to Medical Education. They basically said, you're canceled. You don't exist anymore because of what you did. And they're telling medical students, well, you don't need to have good grades. You don't need to, because we have to have equality. We have to bring people in who are not qualified, but for diversity. This is completely beyond the pale. This is what's happening in your medical schools. These are anti-Flexner activists. They hated the guy. They canceled him out, made him go away. And now they're saying, no, we got to have diversity. We got to have equity, and we have to have inclusion. They're literally changing the rules in medical school. They're getting rid of the testing. They're getting rid of the SAT scores. And all the things that doctors have to do, they're saying, no, not going to do that. What they're doing, plain and simple, they are ending merit-based admission. That's merit-based. That's best of the best getting in because you want to have the best doctors. Nope. They're ending that. Saying, no, we got to even things up. We got to bring in more people who are different color, different whatever, to make sure everything is equal. Because they say, well, people who are African American, they like African American doctors best. And maybe, I don't know. And since we don't have enough of them, we have to have more of them. Well, letting in more who are not qualified to be doctors does not solve the problem. It makes it worse. But it's happening, folks. DIE is happening in the medical profession. And you might want to ask yourself, is your doctor one of those? I mean, is your doctor one of those ones who was brought in for equity and inclusion and diversity? I mean, there's special tests called the MCAT, and those testers for medical school people coming in, they got to pass to go to advance in medical school. They're saying, no, we don't need that because, well, there are people who are going to fail it, and but we need to have people of the number of people of every organization, right number of people of the right color. Folks, this is what's happening in your country. And if you haven't figured that out, you better start asking questions. Did the medical school your doctor went to require the MCAT for him to advance? If it didn't, you might want to question what's going on, because that's what's happening in America. A little something you should know what's going on in the medical profession, the one that takes care of you. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. DIE. With things like that, chances are you have a doctor treating you, you just might die. That's all I got. See ya.
Coming up next. The chances are pretty good that you've heard the term diversity, inclusion, and equity. Diversion, inclusion, and equity. I call it DIE. Other folks like to call it DEI. I like DIE better because it tells you the truth of what you're getting. Well, this is an article that I reviewed from the Federalist magazine. Yeah, believe it or not, I actually read some weird stuff. Federalist magazine, and here's the headline. There it is right there. New study shows that McKinsey's studies promoting DEI, or also what I call DIE, profitability were garbage. Now, this comes down to the United States military because I am a retired military veteran. And a report that came out that shows a study of the global consulting firm McKinsey and Company, I don't know who they are, but global consulting firm, show the correlation between diversity, equity, and inclusion, better known as DEI, DIE to me, programs and significant profits were based on, guess what? Junk science. 30-page published paper by the Econ Journal Watch found the studies conducted by the consulting giant in 2015, 18, and 20, and 23 could not be verified to find a significant result supporting their conclusions that favor corporate DEI regimes. You understand that? They found the DEI, or DIE as I call it, was junk, wasn't legit. And I got to tell you, this bothers me a whole bunch because the report, the McKinsey report, this is where it bothers me. The McKinsey report was used by the U.S. military. It was cited in a 2015 diversity report. Here it is right here. Take a look at this. Despite the flaws in the McKinsey's work, it says the U.S. military cited the 2015 diversity report from the consulting company in 2021. So they're quoting something from that is junk science and quoting in the military, which bothers me a whole lot. It was in the Navy's Task Force 1 last report, espousing the need to diversify the force. Really? Diversify the force? And the authors wrote, and here's what the authors wrote: gender diverse organizations are 15% more likely to perform or to outperform other organizations, and diverse organizations are 35% more likely to outperform their non-diverse counterparts. They're quoting this involving the United States military. And BS. It's been proven. And so they go, here's what they're saying. When compared to the 2018 U.S. Census population data, our enlisted force, they said, has greater racial and ethnic diversity than our society. Yeah, okay, fine. But the military is based upon meritocracy, being the best. However, they said, is unrepresented from the gender perspective. Our officer corps, and I was one of those, our officer corps remains overwhelmingly white and male, except for Asian representation is not representative of the U.S. today. I don't care. Do you want somebody, and I'm going to take pilots, okay? Let me just take pilots. When I went into pilot training, we had 91 in our class. 91. Diverse, all kinds. We graduated 42. And you know why? Because only the best survived. When you go into the military, you have to take tests to see if you're qualified to fly airplanes, to be a military officer, to meet all the standards. Do you want someone he is a pilot because of his color, because of his nationality, because of his sexual orientation? Is that what we want with DEI, DIE? Sorry. So they go on to say, chronic recruiting shortages are forcing the Army to cut 16,500 occupational positions, most of them vacant, she wrote. The Air Force has proposed a reduction of 8,000 troops after missing recruiting goals for the first time in 20 years. You want to know why? Because you're practicing social engineering in the military, and you should never do that. And people are going, I don't want to be part of that. We're a volunteer service. You want to get people to volunteer because they want to be part of a fighting force. You think I want to go back in the military now with this DIE crap going on? Snowball's chance on that one. You want the best of the best. That's right, the best of the best. And they say, okay, 9,000 sailors forcing longer deployments for others. And it goes on to say, she explained race consciousness, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies are making personnel shortages worse. Well, minority recruiting has remained steady or increased, which is fine. But a steep decline in white recruits almost entirely accounts for the ongoing recruiting crisis. We have to have diversity. No, you have to have DEI. That's exactly what's going to happen. Military people, when they sign up, they sign a check. They put their name on a check. And that check says, here you go. You can cash it, which includes the potential of them losing their lives by that check being cashed. That's what military people do. They know they could die, but that's the choice they made. And yet now we want to have diversity, inclusion, equity. No, I don't want that. I don't want that at all. I want the best of the best. You ain't the best, then don't get in this job. Don't get in this profession, and definitely don't get in this career. When I'm serving against somebody or flying with somebody, I want to know I'm flying with the best of the best because he got there the same way I got there. That's my opinion. And now we find out the whole science that this was all junk science. America, you've been bamboozled, you've been had, you've been lied to. But what are you going to do about it? Diversity is a lie. Equity, inclusiveness is a lie. DEI, ladies and gentlemen, is a bald-faced lie. That's all I got. Think about it. See ya. Coming up next, basketball, and make a personal observation based upon what I've seen in my life. Now, obviously, basketball right now is a hot issue, and especially going on, you've got Purdue playing in the NCAA in the Final Four, and that's great for them. And God bless them if they have a chance to win this. That would be great. That would be great. The NCAA basketball March Madness is fabulous. But women's basketball has taken a different turn this year, and that's because of that Caitlin Clark. Iowa, went to Iowa University, and basically lit the place up. Put cheeks in the seats, as they say. She's done an incredible job, and right now, she's playing for the NCAA championship, which they lost last year to LSU. And so I'm going to give you my observation about basketball and people and a little background on my involvement with basketball, not necessarily playing, but let me tell you something maybe you don't know. There was a team back in 1966 called Texas Western College. Their coach was a guy named Don Haskins, and Don Haskins did something in 1966 that had never been done. He won an NCAA championship with 5 black players. Now, that was historic that he did that. Played the University of Kentucky, and Adolph Rupp was the coach of Kentucky. He had a couple of great players. Pat Riley, big name you remember from the NBA, Pat Riley, and Louis Dampier, guards for Kentucky. They were called Rupp's Runts back in those days. But you didn't play black players. And obviously Kentucky had no black players whatsoever until they lost to Texas Western, and then the next year they got their own. Well, today, in today's world, African-American players dominate basketball. They just do, whether you like it or not. That's just the way it is. But that wasn't there back in the 60s until Don Haskins decided he was going to play all black players. Now, how do I know all that? Because I was a student at Texas Western back then. That's right. I went to Texas Western University and graduated back in 1969. But I saw some great players. Not just the great teams of the Haskins, the Bobby Joe Hills, and the Willie Worsleys, and the David Lattons, and Orsten Artis, and Scoops. I mean, I could name all these people because I knew them because they were in my classes with me. They actually went to class back in those days. So they were in my class. And so I knew who they were. And I was a photographer for the university. I was shooting for the school's newspaper. And another good friend of mine, his name was Brian Kanoff. We both were photographers together. Still the best friends today, even 50 years later. He's a top quality professional photographer in El Paso. And BK took a photo of Coach Haskins, which has now been turned into a statue in front of the Haskins Hall, the new facility. You see, back then at Texas Western, our gym, and it was a gym, it seated about 5,500 people. That was it. That's all we had. And you played to a packed house every day. And we didn't care. I mean, for us, going to the warm-ups, watching Willie Worsley, who I think was about 5'8", maybe less, I don't know. He would dunk it in warm-ups. Everybody knew what David Lattin could do. So we saw all of that. And later on, after they left, then you had the likes of a guy named Nate Archibald. Yeah, Nate the Skate. Nate Archibald came from the University of Texas at El Paso, which is what they changed our name to after we won. I still call it Texas Western because that's where I'm from. Well, Nate Archibald played there and obviously went on. He was famous with the Lakers. But here we have college basketball today, and basketball is hot right now with the March Madness. By the way, that term was coined by a writer back in 1939 in Illinois about high school basketball. Because remember, Indiana used to be one-class basketball. One team would come out the end, played everybody. The Milan Miracle, Hoosiers, the movie. All those happened back years ago. They created classes, and now we have classes, and some argue we need to go back to single-class basketball, but right now everything's going okay. But what's going on in college right now, Purdue in the March Madness for the NCAA championship, that'll be played coming up, but the ladies basketball is having their NCAA championship, and now they've garnered a lot of interest. I mean, a recent game with Caitlin Clark was in it. 12.3 million people watched the game. That's never been done. And why do they do it? The Iowa basketball team, a young lady named Caitlin Clark. She's been playing basketball since she was knee-high to a grasshopper. Played AAU, had a bigger brother, played basketball. That's what she did. She did her talent. She's very good at what she does. She, to me, is sort of a Nate Archibald of ladies. She's great. And I watched Nate play in college, and he can make a pass. No-look pass, you didn't know what he was going to do. Well, Caitlin Clark could do much of the same thing, but she's got a great outside shot. She can hit double digits. I mean, 40 points, triple doubles. People don't do that much. She does. But when she's off, a night that she's off, other of her teammates, they step up and they're on. They win. And I've seen some of the most exciting basketball games watching women's basketball. And that's what and frankly, I'm enjoying it. I like to watch it. I like to see what's going on. These girls eventually could be moving into the WNBA. Now, which gets me there. WNBA is an offshoot of the NBA. Everybody knows about that. But they have not done really well. They haven't made a dime in the last 3 decades. So let's be honest. They've had some years ago. They had great players, Cheryl Swoops, and I mean they've had a number of great players in the past. Great players. I mean, there's awards named after them. There's just some fine players they had, and but right now they don't have anybody who's really dynamic. I mean, there may be somebody who's dynamic, but anybody you remember the name, you hear the name, you go, okay, yeah, I know who that is. Right now, the WNBA doesn't have that. Caitlin Clark is going to be going into the WNBA draft, and she will be most undoubtedly ranked number 1. And who has the number 1 choice? The Indianapolis Fever. That's right. Indianapolis, Indiana is going to have Caitlin Clark if she decides to go into the NBA, and that still hasn't totally been decided yet, but she wants to go. So, if she goes, suddenly Indy's going to have a famous person. But it takes 5 people. You got to have 5 people on a team. One person ain't going to do it. Ask Michael Jordan. I watched the era of Michael Jordan, And back in the 80s when Jordan, in the 90s when Jordan was playing, he and Scottie Pippen, and even, you had great players on his team. Jordan was a great player, but he had to have other players to make things happen. There's no I in team, folks. So Caitlin Clark, she's going to Indy. Right now, you see her even doing commercials. She's earning a pretty good paycheck right now, and she's going to earn a big paycheck in the future. But hey, that's where it gets to this. Currently, ESPN is paying about $60 million a year to the WNBA. Their ratings are not strong. Listen, folks, they aren't strong. Can Caitlin Clark make them strong again? I believe she can. Well, the commissioner of the WNBA is telling ESPN she wants $100 million a year because Caitlin Clark is coming into the WNBA. ESPN is owned by ABC. So is ABC, ESPN going to pony up $100 million? Well, if they don't, they're going to be called names. I can guarantee you that. And there's probably some other network out there like the CNN, TNT, whatever. Those other networks, they'll probably will say, "Hey, yeah, we will pay the money," figuring they're going to get the viewers, because she's there. So, is $100 million going to be going into the WNBA? Maybe, if the commissioner of the WNBA gets her way. But Caitlin Clark is going to be the next messiah to that particular venerable sport of the NBA. Right now, they don't have much. If she joins them, they might have something. And as far as Indianapolis goes, they get her. I'm guessing the ticket sales might go up. Caitlin Clark played the full arenas for years. She's playing in front of major audiences on TV. I can't wait to watch the finals, see what she does against folks from the East Coast who are undefeated. It's going to be interesting to watch. Can she do it? They didn't do it last year, but can she do it this year? Right now, at this juncture, at me taping this right now, I don't know. But I can tell you this. She could change the dynamics of women's basketball in the near future. Now, if there's somebody else out there, great. She needs another enemy to go against. You had Michael Jordan going against the Larry Birds. Remember those things that went on? Every great player has to have an enemy, an adverse, so one they can match them up and they're playing against this one. You remember back in the days of Larry Bird playing against Magic Johnson in college. Remember that game in college? Bird against Johnson? Yeah. Got to have a yin and a yang. So is there going to be a yin and yang for her, for Miss Clark? I don't know. But things that you got to have to make excitement. One person don't stop no show. I guarantee you. Have a cast. Got to have the different players. So there's what's going on, folks. There's on it. So yes, I have seen some great college basketball players. I've been around probably the greatest basketball in the history of the NCAA as far as breaking barriers. The team of 66 of the Texas Western Miners who beat 72-65, all-black team, broke the biggest barrier in sports, in my opinion, the glass ceiling. They broke it. I was proud to say I was there watching. I was there photographing it. And I'm proud to say I'm a graduate. But, a little bit more about basketball. Caitlin, she's a dandy. She is a dandy. Will she win the national championship? Open. I don't know. But what I can tell you is, these are the dynamics that make basketball or any sport interesting to everybody. Will it bring in the ratings? Ratings nationally. Can she do it professionally? Time will tell. Well, folks, the basketball season, now the college basketball season for everybody who's a fan of college basketball is pretty well ended. Purdue was beaten by our friends over in Connecticut, and Iowa was upset by the ladies from South Carolina. Now, depending on which teams you were in favor of, that's your call. You can be in favor of anybody you want to. But what America was watching becomes an interesting point. And I'm going back to the Iowa-South Carolina game
with Caitlin Clark. That game produced more eyeballs watching a basketball game. Turns out that peaking at what is peak time, 25 million people were watching that game. Now think about that. Think about the large television shows that we watch. Think about the Super Bowl. Think about all these famous games, Michigan versus Ohio State. One basketball game in featuring women, not guys, women, garnered 25 million viewers. And the average was approximately 19 million. But for the peak, like I said, it was 25 million. That, my friends, is unheard of. It's never been done. It is gigantic in every single way, shape, or form you can imagine. Now, South Carolina's coach is named Dawn Steele. She's a great player by herself. She could probably be forgiven for wanting to focus on her players because her players won the game. But they capped off a 38-0 season. 38-0. That's a pretty good basketball season. But she took time out of her press conference to basically say that Caitlin Clark was a GOAT, G-O-A-T, greatest of all time in her particular area, and she was hailing the fact that she did what she did. Now, bigger question now comes down to it. You've got the WNBA will be having its draft very soon. And the Indianapolis Fever obviously hold the number one spot, and they're probably going to pick Ms. Clark. But some of the other players and some of the other prognosticators are speaking down about this and saying that she is not going to fit in the color of her skin, her religion, her sexual orientation. These are people in this league that are saying she's not going to fit in because she's not a lesbian. She's not black. And because that's what the league is. I'm sorry, folks. It ain't about that. It's all about merit. Who's the best player at being a player? And can she come into the league and be better than some of the other people before her? You know, Reggie Miller had a sister, Cheryl Miller. She was one of the top. She was one of the best. We haven't had a dominant woman coming in off the college scene and into pro sports for women in a long time. And I'm using Cheryl Miller because she was a good example. But Miss Clark, she's being already put down by people saying because she's not black and she's not a lesbian, that she shouldn't be in the league. Sorry, when we get down to that, we become a pretty sorrowful place, folks. Pretty sorrowful place. So let's see what happens with the draft. Let's see whether it's just nothing but women being catty to one another. I don't know. But it's not something I'm proud of. And I think this is America. That's not the way we treat people in America. At least we didn't used to. That's my take on it. That's all I got. See ya. Coming up next. Well, if you're looking for the latest outrage in college sports, or any sports for that matter, here's the latest one that takes place at Louisiana State University, LSU, down in Baton Rouge. Recently, they had a big basketball game playing against Iowa, the Caitlin Collins thing, and their people who were the national championships last year got knocked out of the tournament by Iowa. And that one young lady who knocked out, 41 points, just cleaned the place out. And something happened. Trouble is, something that someone finally noticed, but had been going on for a lengthy period of time that nobody talked about. Some sports writers said, hey, did y'all notice that during the national anthem, none of the Kentucky players were on the court? Nothing there on the sidelines, just empty chairs. Nobody standing there, for the national anthem. And yet across the court, Iowa players locked arm in arm, looked up at the American flag. Turned into a big deal, didn't it? Turned into a real big deal. Because you remember all the problems that happened when people were kneeling for the national anthem and all the hubbub and uproar that happened about that? Colin Kaepernick. Yep. Remember what happened to him? Well, now the governor of Louisiana, a fellow by the name of Jeff Landry, is threatening scholarships after the LSU players missed the national anthem. Well, the coach of the team, she said, hey, here's what the coach said. Her name is Kim Mulkey. She said, honestly, I don't even know when the anthem was played. We have a routine where we go on the floor, then they come off at 12-minute mark. I don't know. We come in, we do our pregame stuff. I'm sorry, listen, it's nothing intentionally. This is our routine. Well, looking back at it, people started looking back at it. Apparently, both the football and the basketball team don't show up for the national anthem. They go back into their clubhouse. Final words, whatever it is. They've been doing it for a while now. But do you think it's right for a governor to say we're taking away scholarships? Now think about that for a second. Can the governor take away scholarships from the university players who were there because of their ability and say, yeah, because you're not on the court for the national anthem, we're going to take away your scholarship and you get nothing? Can the governor do that? Should the board of trustees, should the board of regents, should the athletic directors? Well, this has been going on in Louisiana State apparently for a long time. They don't do it. They don't come out for the national anthem and haven't done it for a long period of time. Are we now in the country where we're going to say, you must be there for these things or else we're going to harm you? I'm torn in this. I believe that the national anthem is important in this country because I serve my country and that flag means a whole lot to me. And many of us who also served and many who died and never came back. That national anthem represents us, our country, this nation. So yeah, I'm torn. And when I first saw that, I thought, well, they were just being out there because they're just angry at America and they want to don't care and just don't want to show they don't care. That is until I found out they've been doing this all along. I don't know how many, if it's a year, 2 years, I don't know what it is. But according to the coach, their regime is the 12-minute mark. They go in the locker room for final words. If that's the case, I may have to cut them some slack. Don't want to. But if that's been their procedure for a long time and nobody said anything until this game, then somebody's trying to rile something up that doesn't need riling. I don't like it, but if that's been their routine for a period of time, then I'm not going to say anything about it. But does it bother me? Yeah, it does. I'm a veteran. That flag means a lot. And the national anthem means everything. It's my national anthem. It's your national anthem. Honor it, respect it. Because if you don't, someday you may not have it. Just saying. That's all I got. See ya.
Coming up next.
Well, as you know, the Masters golf tournament is soon to be upon us. And over the last few years, one of the reasons people watch the Masters is simply to see what Tiger Woods is going to do. Now, let's be honest. Tiger Woods, I think, has played the Masters, 15 times? He's won a lot. I remember the first time he won it. He won it like 12 strokes. I was on the radio at the time, and we were marveling how well he was just destroying the Augusta course. Well, he has played there numerous times and has won, and the ratings when Tiger Woods plays, whether anybody likes it or not, the ratings are through the proverbial roof. Sort of like women's basketball. You get a lady like Caitlin out there, she scores 12.3 million viewers, biggest of any time women basketball in history. Somebody great's going to garner the ratings. Tiger does that in golf. Well, apparently he's going to be playing in the Masters coming up soon. And he has a new training regime. One of which, I'm not making this up, okay? One part of his training regime is Tiger Woods is abstaining from sex. Yeah, I know I said it. But he's eating right, he's taking care of himself, and one of the things he's doing is refraining from whoopee. I remember as a kid, coaches telling players for a big game, don't be doing that. I thought it was wives' tale, thought it was, fantasy, whatever. But apparently it must mean something to somebody because Tiger Woods is abstaining prior to the Masters, thinks it's going to conserve his precious bodily fluids. Where did I hear that one before? I think it was in a movie. Yeah, I think it was in a movie. And so that's what he's doing, preparing for the Masters. Now, as you know, Tiger Woods, he's had to withdraw from some golf tournaments recently simply because walking, he can't walk. He was involved in that tragic accident out in California when he lost control of a vehicle, almost lost his leg. So he's had to rehabilitate himself to get back on a golf course because in the Masters and major tournaments, golf tournaments, you walk the course. And the Masters, if you've ever been to Augusta, it's got hills. It goes up, it goes down. It's a hilly course. And walking 5 miles with his kind of leg and to do it 4 times, 4 days in a row, brutal. Now, other golf courses or other tournaments say, yeah, the golfers, they ride in golf courts. Okay, it's fine. You can ride in the golf cart. Not the Masters. Can't do it. It's a private tournament. So he's eating right. He's doing everything right because he wants to be in the Masters. He doesn't want to withdraw because he is focused. Tiger Woods is one of those people. He is focused. He wants to play. That's a mentality that he has. Other people have mentality in their particular sport. He doesn't his. So there's the latest thing. So now you know how Tiger Woods is getting ready for the Masters, eating right, working out, and abstaining from whoopee. Apparently, that's a mental situation. News to me, but maybe not to you. Or do you ever remember your coaches telling you that when you were young? Tell you the truth, I do. Did I? I ain't telling you nothing. That's all I got for the time being. All right, folks, take care and enjoy the Masters. See ya.
Coming up next.
Well, I have talked about electric cars in the past, and I guess I'm going to talk about them again, simply because a new report has come out from Digital Insurance, which is a company, that says here's what it costs to fix electric cars, and especially dealing with batteries, because they're all run on batteries. That's what they are. Electric cars, nothing more than a car powered by a battery, much less the cars that you had when you were a kid. You take the 2 AA's or triple A's or quadruple A's or whatever the hell you put in your car, and that's what powered the car till it ran out. Well, obviously the administration wants you and me to drive electric cars. So car dealers, car manufacturers says, sure, we can make those. And they started building them and building them. And everybody said, we're going to be building nothing but electric cars. We're going to stop building gasoline-powered cars. Everything's going electric. Yeah, how'd that work out for you? It didn't. People eventually figured out that, electric cars in the northern climates, they got a problem. They also figured out something else. You want to wait 2 or 3 days, depending on where you charge, to charge a car up? And the electric grid can't handle it. And there's not enough electrical facilities to charge up cars. You got to drive all over God's green earth to figure out where the charging stations are. And in the winter, don't think your car is going to run for very long. A lot of other things. But when it comes to getting them fixed up, this is where the insurance companies are going. Let's take a look and see if these cars are worthy of insuring, and how much are we going to have to charge folks for their insurance on those vehicles? Glad you asked. Well, take a look at this. According to Digital Insurance, they were rating the top cars with the most expensive cost to change the batteries. There you go. The Tesla Y, $13,000 to $15,000. The Tesla 3, once again, $13,000 to $15,000. And let's go to an American car. How about the Chevy Bolt? I don't know if anybody drives a Bolt, but okay. Chevy Bolt, $16,000 to $16,250 for your battery. That's more than a car cost. You're that stupid. And then, of course, Ford doesn't escape this. Ford, well, they're looking at cars that are costing somewhere between $31,000 $39,000, but they're looking at their module, because they use modules instead of one big battery. They're like sections of battery. Those modules cost anywhere between $6,000 and $7,000 each. Don't know how many the car has, but there you go. The numbers cost. And now we can move down. How about the Volkswagen ID4? Well, that's going to cost you a whole bunch because the batteries cost $27,000. Yeah, for a battery. How that works. Now, Hyundai's make some nice cars. Now they're pushing their Ioniq. So now you're going to replace that one's $11,000. And I tell you what, repair cost is going to light up your wallet. Actually, it's going to empty out your wallet. So then we move down to the Rivian R1S. I've never seen a Rivian. I don't know who carries them, but there they are between $9,100 and it's going to cost you. Well, the cars cost somewhere between $93,000 and $76,000. But once again, big cost of batteries right there. Going to cost you a whole lot of money for the Rivian. The Ford F-150 Lightning. This is the latest one. And who doesn't like a Ford F-150 pickup truck, right? Battery replacements between $4,000 and $5,000. Less than some others, but it's still costly. The Tesla X, $10,000 to $12,000. And number 10, the venerable BMW i4. Plan to spend $13,000 to $15,000 to replace the battery, which is 83.9 kilowatts. Here's the deal, folks. People said, well, let's get an electric vehicle because we want to get rid of fossil fuels. Well, this whole thing about global warming is BS. The sun controls everything the sun controls everything. This thing about, get rid of pollution, what have you. There may be an outside chance that someone, I'm thinking Toyota, maybe, are going to invent a hydrogen-powered vehicle. If that happens, I might be looking at one of those myself. But right now, I ain't getting near an EV. You want something? Consider a hybrid with a little engine and a little battery. They both work together. They actually both work not too bad. If you get a straight electric vehicle, you are stupid. So there you go. You have been briefed. You have been made aware. And now you know what your insurance could be if you go out and buy an electric vehicle. Don't say I didn't tell you, because I did. That's all I've got. See ya. Coming up next. Okay, normally I don't talk about media personalities per se, but one kind of caught my attention only because of some things that went on. And I went, gee, who is she and how did she get where she is? And yes, it's a she. The woman's name is Sage Steele. Now, that's kind of an unusual name for someone, but you look a little background in, you might understand why she has the name. And she was on a TV show. Matter of fact, she was on Tucker Carlson's network where he interviews people. They was talking to her, and she happened to mention during this interview that she was a graduate of Indiana University. And my pointy ears went up, and I went, what? Sage Steele, ESPN, on TV, hosting all these things on these shows, national shows. An IU grad? Same as Aisha Husney at Fox News? Really? So I got to wondering, well, who is she and where did she come from? Well, turns out that she used to work for ESPN, but ultimately resigned, quit, or was fired. It depends on whom you ask. Lawsuits went back and forth. One of the things she said, she was given a chance to interview the president and was given a script by ESPN and told, do not vary from that one iota. And she said, hey, this whole thing was scripted. This is a softball thing. And it was set up. And she got very concerned about that and said, this ain't right.
Well, she went out and said some things about ESPN and their management and how the fact they have turned from a sports channel into a political channel, and the two parted ways. Depends on who you ask, but they took her down. So here it is. There she is. And she was asked about who you're going to vote for. And she said voting for Trump is a no-brainer over voting for Biden. It's about policy and not emotion. So I said, okay, I'm going to go look up about her. Who is Sage Steele? All right, so I went on to Wikipedia. Turns out she was born in 1972. But her father, a gentleman by the name of Gary and Mona Steele, her parents, her father is African American. And Sage, and that's one thing that she said. She said, why didn't Obama say he was biracial? Because he's not black. He's part black and part white, just like I am, she said. That created a lot of problems. So anyway, her mother's Irish-Italian. Her father happens to be African American. But what about her father? Her father, Gary Steele. Some of you will know who this name is. He was the first black varsity football player at West Point. Get it? The first black football player at West Point during the mid-1960s. That's right. That was the era of Roger Staubach and Navy. Remember all that? He was inducted into the Army Sports Hall of Fame 2013. He also had a standout career on the Black Knights football, track and field teams. He did all that. Well, he went into the Army after graduating from West Point and retired as a colonel, a full bull, after 23 years of service. But you're saying, wait a minute. I don't tell you how the daughter ended up at IU. Well, they were transferred all over the world like Army people are, and he ended up being transferred into Indianapolis at Fort Benjamin Harrison. Yes, Indianapolis, Fort Benjamin Harrison, finance area. His daughter was born and went to Carmel High School. Yes, highfalutin, Rudy Tooty, rich people, Carmel High School. She went to Indiana University. Graduated in 1995. Went around. She did all sorts of stuff. She was, like I said, on Sports Center. She did NBA Countdown. You name it, she did it. Well, she's now started her own thing. So we got two famous people now who are graduates of Indiana University. Aisha Husney, Fox News, news person, dynamic. She used to be my newswoman at WoWo back in the day. Yes, Aisha was my newswoman. And Sage Steele, Carmel High School graduate and graduate of Indiana University and big-time sportscaster at ESPN, no longer, but now doing her own thing. Just thought I'd give you a little background on a couple of IU students that maybe you didn't know about. That's the latest information I got. Hope you enjoyed it. See ya. Coming up next. Well, I want to tell you about a little story that happened in a car wash in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Not that you really care about what happens in a car wash in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, but something you should know about if you happen to use a car wash wherever you happen to be. Because things that could happen could cost you a pretty penny. All right, let's talk about this. So, lady goes to a car wash. She enters it like normally do. They spray off the car and spray on water and take her money, and then she goes in, puts the car in neutral, and the car goes down the conveyor belt, and the washing happens, and everything happens. You know what happens in a car wash, right? Well, she's in a car wash, and suddenly something happens, and a car in front of her stops. Now, on a conveyor belt, you're saying, wait a minute, how can that be? Well, it may not be a conveyor belt. It may be a chain that pulls along the car and the tires. It varies on car washes. Every car wash is different. And apparently this car wash, Oklahoma, it's a chain, a block that goes behind the wheels and just pushes the car along. Well, apparently a car in the front, for whatever reason, put on its brakes. Wasn't rolling anymore, stopped. Now, that chain system apparently slid underneath the tires or whatever it does, or on rollers or what have you, and the other cars kept moving forward. Where the car in the front has stopped. What's that do? Bam! Cars start crashing into each other, and they did. All right, it happens. It's a car wash. Well, you're going to say, okay, the person in the front who stopped their car for whatever reason, they're the person who created this problem. Well, in car washes, it ain't necessarily so. Because if you drive on a road, as you well know, the person in front of you stops and you ram them in the back end, they're not at fault, you are. Well, the car wash, they have their own rules. What happened in this particular situation in this Oklahoma City car wash, the car that stopped suddenly started and headed out of the car wash. Or as we like to say, bolted. Did a bolt. And all the other people with the cars smashed up, front and rear, what have you, they're sitting there going, hey, what's going on here? Well, the car wash said, folks, it ain't our fault. Person who caused all this, they bolted. So contact your insurance company or else pay it yourself. Now, the lady in the car wash, she's upset. Her car's damaged. She said to get the front end fixed, it's going to cost her $1,700 because these new fancy cars, all the electronics and stuff, yes, it costs a lot because they got to recalibrate everything and put it all back together and make it work right. So the car wash says, no, we're not liable. So I'm just to tell you, if you're getting ready to have your car wash done, because we're going into the spring and summer and everybody wants their cars clean, be careful what happens in a car wash, whether you may end up paying for it or your insurance company may end up paying for it. But you might want to check the rules of the car wash to see what they're liable for, because they may not be liable for anything. The fault may be put on you. Just something for you to think about as you get your car cleaned this summer. Gee, I always like to leave you with a smile on your face. See ya. Coming up next. Well, boys and girls, what do you say we discuss money? Because money makes the world go round, and money talks and BS walks. So, here's our money discussion for today. It comes out of Kansas City. Seems the voters of one county in Kansas City area decided they didn't want to keep paying a sales tax that had been levied onto them many moons ago to pay for a particular building that was built by a professional team in Kansas City. Well, it turns out that the owners of the Kansas City Chiefs and the Kansas City Royals, they wanted new digs. And so they went to the public. Now, they went not to the entire state, only to one county where Kansas City is. Bear that in mind because this only affects one county, but the entire Kansas City area with a stadium for the Royals and the Chiefs, people come in from miles and miles around. Okay, but only one county is taxed to pay for it. Just something I think stuck in some folks' craw. Well, anyway, so the Chiefs wanted a new stadium, and the Royals, they wanted something new too, but the Royals kind of prevailed. They were going to get a new stadium, and the Chiefs were going to get like almost $900 million to renovate their Arrowhead Stadium, where they play their football. Vote went out. Members of this particular county got to vote on extending. Now, you're going to use that word. Remember, this sales tax, I said, is been in force, and it's about, it's less than a half a cent sales tax for people in that county, anything you buy. And it's been in force for a long time, but the Royals and the Chiefs wanted the voters to extend it out for another 40 years. Well, the vote came in. The voters said, ew, I ain't doing it. I'm done with you guys. So, what do the teams do? Well, that's going to be interesting. Now, there's a lot of stuff they could do.
First thing that happened when they did that, the mayor of Dallas, Texas, said, "Hey, y'all, come on down. We got the Cotton Bowl. You can use that. That's a nice place." The Cotton Bowl's been around for a long time. Refurbished. They made it look really nice. But it's open. But it's Texas. Of course, Jerry Jones would never allow another team in his city. I can almost guarantee you that. But that's just my opinion. So what are the Royals and the Chiefs going to do? Well, they can go to private developers, get money there. They could go to city councils. They can go to building developments that cities have, tap them for money. They can do all those things, and all those things have been tried by teams all over the place. From about 1990 to 2023, there were votes cast in 57 stadiums and arena proposals, 57 of them throughout the United States. That people approved them. 35 of them were approved. 22 were not. But so what's Kansas City baseball and football team going to do? My guess is they're going to try to go to backdoor on government, get a county council or city council or some particular financial group to foot this bill. There'll be bonds, all sorts of stuff sold that they will see if they can get the money that way. Because you see, leaving the city is a threat that when teams start to make that to a city, be careful. Because you better have another city that's willing to pick up the tab. And in today's economy, and I'm only talking about today, if you've been to the grocery store lately, you know what I'm talking about. In today's economy, people are going to say, vote for more taxes for me to pay for this stuff? I don't think so. And that's my feeling, especially in the Midwest. So that's kind of where we stand, folks. The voters in Kansas City said, nope, ain't going to do it. No more tax. Royals and the Chiefs, they got themselves in a little bit of a pickle. They want, who's going to give it to them? Can they go backdoor through government? Yes, they can, and they may try. Will they threaten to leave? Wouldn't surprise me, but that's an end-all thing. Because if you do that, you darn well better have a place to go, and you darn well better have the money set up to cover whatever it is you want to create. Today ain't yesterday, folks. Today's the economy. Stupid. I think I've heard that one issued before. Oh, yeah. Call James Carville, Bill Clinton's campaign, 1992. Just saying. That's all I got for you right now. Chew on that. See ya. Well, that does it for today's edition of the Pat White Show. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure to follow us on social media for the latest Pat White Show, for all the news and updates. And stay tuned for brand new episodes of the Pat White Show coming real soon. Like what you're hearing? Make sure you don't miss an episode by following the Pat White Show on Spotify. Just search for the Pat White Show, hit follow, and get ready for insightful conversations delivered straight to your Spotify feed. If you enjoy watching podcasts as much as listening to them, good news! The Pat White Show is also on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel now for visual content, behind-the-scenes footage, and full podcast experience. Find us on YouTube at the Pat White Show channel.